right, hi guys, we're gonna get started. Welcome to Tech for Tots. My name is Samantha Ely. I'm a teacher of the visually impaired and orientation and mobility specialist here at Perkins, and I'm currently working as the program manager for the Educational Leadership Program for Perkins International.
Hi everybody, I'm Hunchan Vo. I'm currently a teacher in the lower school and secondary, and I'm also a PhD candidate at UMass Boston, and I have a million different alphabet letter soup on the end, but basically I'm a TVI, O&M, VRT, and a CADIS, which is assistive technology
I thought
specialist.
you were missing one. You are.
Yeah, but that's okay. This is alphabet soup. But yeah, so welcome to our Tech for Tots presentation.
So our agenda for today is you're going to see the progression of it, but we're going to start with discussing what is AT. AT stands for assistive or access technology. We're going to talk about your rights as parents and the rights that your students and children have. We're going to briefly touch on assessments and the importance of getting those assessments for your children. Then we're going to go into a whole bunch of different assistive technology. We also have a table up here, so when we're done, you can come explore some of the items that we'll talk about. We're going to do kind of case study videos. We're going to show some videos of our students actually doing what we talk about, and then what's next and how you move forward.
Yeah, so what exactly is assistive technology? It's also known as access technology. That's a newer term that people are trying to use. You'll hear us using the acronym AT throughout our presentation, but basically by law, by the IDEA, it's any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether acquired commercially off the shelf, modified, or customized, that's used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of children with disabilities. And on the screen right now, we have an image of an umbrella that is split into two, with one side saying devices, the other side saying services, and underneath their umbrella it says considering, evaluating, and implementing. So basically, any item or piece of anything can really be technology, and it can be considered assistive technology. So this could be going from like a braille note display, which is a really expensive device, to literally a like an iPad, or like even a sticker could be considered assistive technology. So it's a wide range of what is considered assistive technology, or often known as AT. Yes.
Great. Okay, so we're going to briefly talk about the IDEA. Hopefully by now this is not the first time you've been hearing about this. This is a federal law that protects your children, our students, to make sure that they get the services that they need. And by law, your schools have to provide a free and appropriate public education. If they can't, they look elsewhere. And then under this big law, we have things like assessments, direct services, and then AT also falls under this federal law as well.
Yeah, so with that, when people are thinking about assistive technology, many times people just think about the actual physical devices, but assistive technology is more than just the devices. As we mentioned before, it also includes the services as well as the assessments. And we kind of want to just do a brief overview of the different types of assessments that your child might receive. So very vision specific assessments. Some of them might include a functional vision assessment, which is conducted by a teacher of the visually impaired, a learning media assessment, and also an orientation mobility assessment. So a functional vision and learning media assessment is really looking at how does your child utilize any usable vision within their current school environment, and then we look at like what are some of their needs and different types of accommodations that they might need. And an orientation mobility assessment looks at how your child travels and how independent they are with traveling and how safe they are with traveling. And then based on the evaluation, we look at the different types of services and recommendations that are needed. Some additional evaluations that your child may receive are physical therapy, occupational therapy. So physical therapy is looking at more of the gross motor. Occupational therapy is looking at more fine motor. Speech and language is looking at how does a child produce speech and if they have any difficulties with that. If your child has any auditory things, you might have a teacher of the deaf looking at an eval and psych eval as well too, looking at the whole child and how their cognitive abilities. So these type of assessments occur at least every 3 years, but you as parents can request for them to occur more frequently as well too. So.
Great. So these are very, very common assessments. So if you have a child with a disability, it's pretty standard that these are the areas that get assessed. However, assistive technology is not always an area that gets assessed, and it sometimes falls through the cracks. And this is for a whole bunch of reasons. The biggest one being, we were both in public schools as itinerant teachers, and a lot of times this fell through the cracks because there are not in-house specialists, meaning there's not someone in the building at all times to look at the assistive technology. So then they have to contract out, and that's a whole other world too. And if your child has a visual impairment, your general assistive technology assessment or specialist, they don't know visual impairments. So they're looking at things like switches, communication devices, maybe general software, but they have very limited knowledge on visual impairments. So, and many of our students do need these things, right? They do need communication systems, they do need switches, but a communication system for a child who has CVI or cortical cerebral visual impairment is going to look a whole lot different than a communication system for a child with 20/20 vision, right? So when you're thinking about more of this visual impairment technology, maybe they need some magnifiers, or maybe they're going to be a Braille student as well. You need to be looking elsewhere, and this is where your child's teacher that's visually impaired can come in with recommendations, help that process get going. But as you learn in a second, there is a whole other category that you should be going to if you're really looking for that vision-specific technology.
So this is where the role of a CADIS comes in. So CADIS is a really not long acronym to basically mean that somebody is specialized to work with assistive technology for people who are visually impaired. So just to summarize what Sam said, somebody who just specializes in just general AT, they don't have the specialized knowledge that you need for visual impairments. Somebody who specializes in just general technology, so for example, IT people might not know anything about assistive technology. And a TVI, or teacher of the visually impaired, they work with children usually from birth to age 22 in all areas of the expanded core curriculum, but they might not feel comfortable actually teaching the technology. So this is where the role of a CADIS comes in. This is a new role that started in 2016. So it's basically an AT person, a general AT, plus an IT person, plus somebody who specializes in visual impairment. So that equals somebody who is a certified assistive technology instructional specialist for individuals with visual impairments, or also known as a CADIS. And people who are CADISes work with all ages. So this includes babies to, and sometimes I say retired, or some people call it to deaf, but basically literally all ages of the spectrum. So it's important to, if you are able to reach out to your school districts to be able to contract a CADIS to do the actual eval, that is your best bet. But since this is a really new certification, there is a high shortage, and because they work with all ages, a lot of CADISes, they actually work with adults, especially with the the Veterans Affairs people a lot of the time. So within the schools, you might not have that. But there's a bigger number of teachers with the visually impaired. So basically what we wanted to say that is to make you aware that there is roles of the CADISes, but because of such a high demand for assistive technology evals and a very low shortage of CADISes right now, it's better to get any type of assistive technology eval versus just waiting. I've had students, just for example this year, they requested an AT eval from me because I'm a CADIS, and I'm one of the, I think there's currently 2 now within this whole state of Massachusetts. And I'm back at school, whatever, so I don't have as much time, so they're waiting literally a full year before they even get a chance to get an eval with me. And because of the high demands, they're missing out on being able to get access to technology. So until we can get enough people, our big thing of really showing you this is please go get, really advocate for a technology eval, and if you can't get it from a CADIS, it's still better to get some type of eval than nothing.
Yeah, and I'm going to add on to that too. If you can't get a CADIS, your child's TVI is trained in assistive technology. There's the expanded core curriculum the TVI is responsible for a lot of things, but technology is under there. So they should definitely be helping provide recommendations. And if you're able to get a general assistive technology specialist, they should be working right with that technology specialist to help bring visual impairments to their attention as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add one more thing that a lot of TVIs, personally in my opinion, could be CAD assists if they really wanted to, but because of the whole certification process and you have to take extra classes, pay money, do tests and stuff like that, a lot of people might opt out on it. So you might already have a really strong TVI that is able to do a really strong technology eval. So the title doesn't really mean much right now. So because just again the high shortage and the process of getting the certification. So just trust your TVIs if they feel confident with helping out with the AT evals.
But just know it's there, and as children get to more complex technology as well, this is probably the area you want to go. So we're going to assume that you advocated for your child's needs and you got that assessment. So now you're probably thinking, what's next? And so how do you get this technology? It's very, very expensive if you haven't learned already. Our field, for some reason, has very expensive technology. Technically, it is the school district's responsibility to purchase that equipment for your child. And even if they get outplaced to a different school, so let's say you live in Worcester and your child comes here to Perkins, by law, it's Worcester's responsibility to buy that equipment for your child. Some schools do have funds to help supplement that technology, but the school district should be helping you out with that. And then there are additional options as well. The APH quota funds, so the American Printing House for the Blind. Each child who has a visual impairment gets an allotted amount of money through these quota funds, and your child's TVI is responsible for these funds. So you'll definitely want to talk to them because they're the ones that will order, help suggest things, maybe work with you to figure out what your child needs. And APH, it's not just technology. If you haven't explored it yet, I definitely recommend you check out their website because there's things from slant boards to light boxes, magnifiers, and some pretty basic technology as well, which is a great start for a lot of our kids. And then when we move to, we're lucky here in Massachusetts, we have a loan library, we have the AIM library that they work with quota, but they'll also sometimes loan out equipment. And there are also some private organizations in the state that will let you trial a device for a couple weeks. And trialing devices can be very, very important because you can take the data, you can justify the child's need, and the school district will be more likely to buy it once you have that data. And then of course, if you're not really getting anywhere, which hopefully you have it by the time you get down here, there are local charities and organizations. I've worked with many of my students, with the Lions Club, other organizations to help raise funds for these technology. So the help is there, just unfortunately, you gotta start with the school and work your way down.
Yeah, and I wanna just add one more thing to that. With IDDA, the law, it states that the schools are required to give your child free appropriate education. That doesn't mean the best. So that doesn't mean that they will purchase the latest and greatest technology. So just keep that in mind that because some parents are like, well, we could try to go into like due process because we're not getting the best. It's like, well, they're not required to give you the best. So that's where the assistive technology evaluation is really an important part because it really goes in and really explains the benefits of like purchasing that tech and why it is versus just saying like, hey, we want this kid to have the $6,000 device and nobody can really give a good justification of why. So like it goes back to the whole process of getting a really good eval from somebody who knows what they're talking about so you can get the most appropriate and hopefully the best device for your child.
Yeah, I mean, and how many times did you walk into public schools and you say, oh, a video magnifier will help, and they go, oh, we have one. So they'll take you over to a closet full of assistive technology from like the 1960s. So the video magnifiers are huge, the quality's awful, maybe they don't work great. And a lot of times they think they're providing that technology, but we need to bring them into 2023.
So now that we kind of went over kind of the laws and your rights as parents and teachers, we wanted to go over some just basics of assistive technology, specifically for people who are blind and visually impaired. There's a whole big range of technology that's out there, and there's a lot, so we're not going to go over everything. But I wanted to show you this image of a toolbox and kind of really explain that there's not a one-size-fits-all technology that will work for everybody, and not everybody only needs like one type of device. So just like a toolbox, you may need like a hammer sometimes. In certain situations, you might need a screwdriver in other times, and you don't want to just rely on just one type of device to get you through. So that's really important, especially when you're looking at the assistive technology report. A good one should really go over and explain when should a student be using this type of device and the different options if that's not appropriate for the kid, or different for different situations. So it's really important to think about it as like a toolbox of tools that a student would need. So the first type of technology I wanted to go over, can you switch to the next slide, is no tech. A lot of times people think that you need the greatest and latest, $10,000 device for your child to be doing something or to really help. But a lot of things that you can do don't really require technology. So for example, changing the positioning for a student. So let's say glare and your child is really sensitive to light. Just putting down the blinds and like turning their back to the window might fix that problem. Advocating, so teaching the child just to advocate, to say like, hey, can you read what's on the board, versus like having to purchase a really expensive CCTV if the child isn't constantly having to look at distance stuff, could also be a thing. Changing the environment, like I talked about, maybe changing the blinds, the carpets, changing the physical room that the student is learning in might be all that you may need for that child to be successful in their current setting and current environment. But if you feel like there's an additional thing from no tech, there's also low tech. So on the image on the screen right now, there is a collage of different types of tech. So, and it's supposed to be a little funny. There's like a Starbucks cup that says like universal charger, a kazoo that's like a portable music player, a box that says mass storage device, a pencil as a wireless keyboard, a backpack as hands-free adapter, and a mirror as a selfie generator. So as we mentioned with IDEA, the definition of assistive technology can really mean anything. So a pencil could be assistive technology. Some examples of some low tech, and we have some examples of like some stickers and stuff over there. Tactile stickers are, sometimes they're also known as like cabinet stickers, like bumpers for your cabinets, could be used to label items. You can also just use like another child's stickers as well too, that have like different textures. Another option is if your child is learning Braille, you've probably already seen like a Perkins Braille writer. Magnifiers, puffy paint is also a really good low-tech option to be able to label items. Tactile, tangible symbols. So if your child needs like a total communication way, you might have already seen like symbols. So for example, a tennis ball representing the gym. Large print paper is also another example of low tech. I do want to plug in Tina, who is a vision rehabilitation therapist, is actually presenting on how to, she's calling it like the AAA thing. So when you get a chance to go back and look at the presentations, I highly recommend that you look at her presentations, because she goes over low tech ways of adapting around your house. And they're very simple things that you can do. Like I love, like every TVI has puffy paint and stickers, like ready to go. So those are important.
So we're going to kind of move on to switching into more advanced technology, but I'm going to say advanced, but I mean all ages in that sense, because we want all ages to be exploring at least this advanced technology. So we want to take a minute to talk about keyboarding and keyboards. In a few slides, we're actually going to kind of do a case study of keyboarding so you can see where we're going with this. But typing is a very, very important skill for anyone. So there's no reason why our children shouldn't be typing as well. Obviously, up here you'll see there are lots of different keyboards. The bottom two of these are large print, and they have larger buttons. So if fine motor is a challenge, there are options, as well as keyboards with little
like guards,
like
grids, yeah.
grid guards, so that you're not accidentally pressing more than one button at a time. Simple adaptations, you can just buy like the skin layovers for keyboards for large print. And then, as Winchun mentioned, just adding tactile stickers to a keyboard can be very, very effective. And then, not our kind of mainstream, but a Braille display is a form of keyboard. So I want you to keep that in mind as well. And the general rule of thumb is that if the child has the motor and they have the cognitive skills, you should be using a standard keyboard when possible. That is what they're going to see in the workplace. That is what they're going to see anywhere they go, right? And then also, while these are great, they rely on vision. It's relying on the child having to look down and peck. Hunt and peck is what we call that. Not an efficient way to type. So while it can be a great tool to learn, the idea is that they're going to start touch typing and not have to look at the keyboard. So that's why we say if you can get them on a standard keyboard as early as possible, that is ideal, though we know that there are other cases that might require some adaptations.
Yeah, and for your students or children who are learning Braille, one of the biggest myths is like I should Braille the whole keyboard with Braille stickers, and that is the biggest no-no. Please do not do that. That actually encourages the wrong typing patterns. So really, like again, the rule of thumb is like you should just be learning standard touch typing, using a standard keyboard, and label the keys as needed. Most of the time, we start off with just labeling the F and J keys. They usually already have like a little notch on any keyboard, but like if they need some additional things, then we have labels on some of our keyboards over there that you can explore, just to give like a reference point. That's all that's needed. And you really want to encourage the correct touch typing pattern, so it's easier to pick up and the students will be able to type a lot faster. So yeah, so no to the Braille stickers, please.
We could talk all day just about typing and keyboards, but we'll keep moving on. So now we're going to switch to mid and high tech. I don't really love these titles because it is very fluid. What's high tech to one student may not be high tech for another, so don't worry too much about these titles as well. So kind of getting started with the tech, you may go, okay, my child's not quite at typing yet, where do they fit in? So in the top left here, we have a picture of a Joy Player. If you don't know what a Joy Player is, I do have one over here. They're one of my favorite devices for any age. What you do is you can put music or books onto a little disc. You slip it into the device, and there are very simple buttons on the device for the child to press.
Oh, you're pressing.
Sorry. If your child maybe cannot do these buttons, you can add in a switch, and they can use a switch. Builds independence, it's great for rec and leisure, but it also can be used for more of an academic lesson as well. Great for cause and effect. So this is up here. I recommend you looking at that. That's available through APH as well. Top right, we have a smart brailler. This is great for kids who may be Braille readers or they are going to be in the future. What's great about the smart brailler is it speaks to you. So as the child is typing, it will tell you what letter they're typing, what word, and then as you can see that there's a screen on the front. Excellent for parents to follow along, learn with the child, and teachers if your child's in a general education classroom as well. It engages everyone. Bottom right, we have a talking book player. We have one of those as well here. These are available through the Talking Book Library here at Perkins. They are free, and obviously they play audiobooks, but also magazines, children's books. You will see anyone of any age using this. It goes from children's books to Shakespeare if you want it. So those are wonderful devices. And then this is more of a mainstream thing that a lot of you probably could already do at home. It's showing an iPad casting onto a larger TV screen or computer monitor. This is built into a lot of devices these days, is this casting feature. And what's great about this is, one, anyone can benefit from a larger screen, but two, instead of the child maybe looking at the iPad within an inch, they can at least sit back a little bit and enjoy a broader screen without getting eye fatigue or stressing out anything. So we're happy to talk more about any of these at the end of the presentation, but this is kind of a great place to start, but also a great place to stay and continue to grow because you can move these devices with a child. So next we're going to talk about video magnifiers. They used to be called CCTVs. We're kind of changing the language now to electronic video magnifiers. However, you'll still be hearing CCTVs a lot. At the core, this is a device that enlarges, print, an item. Anything physical you can put under and it will enlarge. We do have an example here. Is this a Jupiter?
Yeah.
We have a Jupiter here available through APH that you can explore as well. So all of these magnifiers will magnify. That is just a given. However, you can get some with kind of more bells and whistles. Some will have text-to-speech options. Some will have like OCR capacity, which is text-to-speech, clearer text or a touch screen. So it kind of depends what your child may need it for. If you're just looking for magnification and color options, you don't need to worry about the big fancy one. But as children typically get older, we may look into more advanced versions of the video magnifier. And it is better to have simple ones, especially for the young kids, because they can get very distracted by all the buttons, all the fun things. So this is actually a student here that we both had. I took him from Winchun. And we borrowed all of these magnifiers and trialed them each for 2 weeks. As you can see, they each kind of have their own pro and con. This one here is a desktop model, so you're not going to be walking around class to class with that. But these two are, this one completely folds up, so great if you're going class to class. And this one's pretty portable too. Smaller screen, larger screen, right? So it's all going to depend on kind of what you're looking for, and your child's TBI can help with that, and your functional vision assessment will determine what is important to look for in a video magnifier. Maybe they need the larger screen. Maybe they don't. Maybe they have a very small field of vision, and they need a smaller screen. So that's what your TBI is here to do, along with a caddis if that's available to you.
And just something to keep in mind with some of the CCTVs, or a lot of them now have a distance option as well too. So if, like I believe all of these that are on the screen right now have a distance option, and the Juniper also, so when you come up you can explore. It can go from near distance, so when you're handwriting, to looking at the board, and some of them move more easily than others. So it really depends on, there's like thousands of them out there, so that's where you really need that specialist specializing in visual impairments to really understand like what this child actually needs. A regular AT person might just generally recommend CCTV, and you might get a big clunky old one versus somebody who knows exactly what your child needs. And I just wanted to show the last image is a more portable, is a smaller version of CCTV. They're considered like handheld. This is available through APH, so again, free for your child to be able to use. So they have big ones to small ones, so wide ranges of CCTVs. So now we're wanted to look ahead into some more of where you're going into upper elementary, middle school, and high school students, kind of like looking ahead of what type of technology is out there. All the tech that we showed prior to that, you can really start as young as you're able to get your hands on the technology, and like we're going to recommend to try to start tech as soon as possible. Don't wait. So building the foundation now for some of the bigger tech. So one of the devices that your child may start getting into, and if they haven't already, is an iPad. And we wanted to have a very special slide for this, just because your child can use more than just an iPad. You might hear otherwise from a TBI, you might hear otherwise from the child, you might hear otherwise from yourself as a parent. But we, as technology specialists, really emphasize that you really need a toolbox of tools, and an iPad is not the only device that the child should be using. It's really great for early learning and exposure, and also great for like rec and leisure type of stuff. But if you are going to be using an iPad, some of the stepping stones to get into the more advanced technology that a child may need is using an iPad with like a Bluetooth keyboard or a attachable keyboard, for example. The keyboarding, if you're starting it, and we're going to be going through kind of our case study of it, it gives more flexibility, so you can transfer those skills to being able to use a computer. And we wanted to kind of give like 2 scenarios. So like a lot of times people debate with me. I've gotten to really heated arguments about iPads, and I go, well, if I gave you just an iPad for your job, would you be able to do all of your work on just an iPad? And most people say, no, I could never. So why are you limiting that option for your child? Another reference I give is my fast food reference. So we know that fast food is quick and children love it. So it's the same with the iPad. We know that it's quick and children love it. But we also know that fast food is not the best for your child, and it is especially for a long term. And eventually you do need to put in the work. And it is a very daunting task to like teach a child to use higher tech. It's the same as teaching a child like how to cook. It's a very daunting task. But we know that eventually this gives them the independence that they need, and they're going to be able to be more successful in their adult lives if we give them the tools earlier on. So that's kind of just a reference for, or 2 analogies for that.
So if you leave here, the one thing I want you to know is the iPad thing, okay? I really want you to consider other options. They're great for certain scenarios, certain kids, certain things. But please, please, please walk out of these doors and know you need to be exploring other pieces of equipment.
So just some additional tech considerations. Again, these are all techs that we're going to be talking about after the child has really built the foundations of some of the more quote-unquote low-tech or no-tech options. And a lot of these can be used in upper elementary to college to your adult world. Just a simple like plugging in. We talked about casting, but also just a regular HDMI cord, plugging it in to make it CCTV. Using tactile image creators. So the next image from the upper left corner, it basically, any printed image that's black, it goes onto the side, it's called like magic capsule paper, and you put it into a machine and it puffs up anything that's black so a child can really feel the different graphics. And this is really great for children who are doing a lot of like math and science to be able to feel the different images. The Braille note takers, I have an example of one that is a touchscreen one. And it's basically, it has refreshable Braille, which means that the pins on the device go up and down. And instead of having to lug around like a big book bag of Braille books, if you haven't seen Braille books, they're really big. You can do most of the activities on these devices. They're sometimes known as like PDAs as well too. Other options is being able to screen share. So especially after like COVID and stuff, I feel like everybody knows how to use Zoom and being able to share the screens now. But it's an old option, or it's been an option for children to be able to share and cast their screens. So if a child needs to view like the smart board, they can cast their information on their iPad, or the teacher can log into Zoom and the student can share their screen, or vice versa, so they can see it on their iPad. Other options are accessible book players. So there's 2 options where there's an iPad app on the bottom left-hand corner. It's using a service called Bookshare. So if your child isn't already registered with Bookshare, it's a free service that has thousands and thousands of different types of books and audiobooks and accessible books that you can turn into Braille and large print and whatnot. If your child isn't already registered, I highly recommend registering them. It's free, so why not? But they have like physical devices where you can press it kind of like a phone that you can listen to thousands of books. Some other more higher tech options are using, we talked about OCR, which is optical character recognition. So it looks at an image of text and it will read it out loud to your child after you like scan it in. And the last one that we wanted to talk about is something called a Braille embosser. So it's basically like a Braille printer. Some of these devices, like the embosser and the basically the picture, it's called POF or machine, but those 2 devices are usually used with your TVI. So they're usually kept within the school, so you might not see those options, but those are important things to consider, especially if your child needs a lot of Braille and tactile productions. Those are really good investments for the schools. And those are usually the ones where, because of the higher ticket price of the items, you get a lot of pushback. But those 2 devices actually save a lot of time and money than having to hand produce a lot of the Braille and tactile images. So those are some transition devices. And we wanted to talk about, you might hear a lot of things called like screen readers and screen magnifiers. Basically, a screen reader, it takes anything that's on the computer and it makes it into an audio version for your child, and they use keyboard navigations to be able to use a computer. So that's why we're really emphasizing the importance of teaching keyboarding early, because until a child knows the foundations of keyboards, they can't really use the screen reader. A screen magnifier on the screen, it just makes it bigger on the screen and you can navigate around on it. So those are like the two options. You might hear some of the very popular ones are called JAWS, which is a screen reader. NVDA is another screen reader. And Zoom Text and Dolphin are really popular screen magnifiers. So you might hear those terms a lot as well too. Can you go to the next slide? So some other options that most devices now have built-in accessibility. So like most people have like an Android or an iPhone or a MacBook or a PC, I'm assuming. Most of those devices, or all of those devices, already have built-in accessibility features. So the Windows ease of access, you might hear it called that, or it's also known as the narrator. In the Chromebooks, they have something called Chromebox, which is their screen readers. Apple has a ton of built-in accessibility, so you might hear the term voiceover. That's their built-in screen readers. And Android, which is called TalkBack. So all of these are free and they're already built into your devices. You just have to go into your settings and type in like accessibility, and you can play around with the different settings and have your child play around with the different options. So that's a great way to like introduce your child to these different types of technology that's already built in before purchasing some third-party applications. Because these are free, and some of the screen readers can cost about like $1,000. So free and 1,000. It's, you know, I say start with free.
So you may be thinking like, oh my gosh, my child's only 6 months old. Oh my gosh, my child's only 2 years old. Obviously, we come from the school age kind of background, but the big thing is the building of the foundations, right? So what we're going to do next is we're actually going to walk through keyboarding and what that looks like at all stages. So we know the end goal, but in order to get to the end goal of touch typing, you need to work on a lot of things. And this is the same for screen readers. Keyboarding actually falls right into the screen reader category. So don't be overwhelmed by the technology we showed you, and realize that it all breaks down into smaller steps that we can work on slowly and successfully. So for ages 0 to 2, so here are some skills that we would like your child to work on so that hopefully one day they can be good typers. First of all, just let them explore, okay? This is going to be just a time of exposure, a time of banging on a keyboard, maybe get a junk keyboard, see if someone's giving one away for free. We don't want to use a nice one here. Exposure to a real keyboard if possible. Things here too, you're going to start fine motor tasks. That's going to be something that's going to be maybe a lifelong thing for your child as well. And examples of fine motor might be like squeezing Play-Doh, putting each finger in Play-Doh. That's something you can start young, and I've done it with high schoolers as well to build that strength. Positional concepts. Obviously, I don't expect a 1-year-old to go up, down, you know, and tell all that. But it doesn't mean you can't be saying that, okay? So we need to be putting this language into your child by using the correct terms, left, right, up, down, so that once they do have whatever communication system in place, they understand those concepts, and it's not the first time that they've heard up, down, left, right. And then cause and effect. This necessarily isn't typing per se. You know, a lot of toys are cause and effect toys, but also if they're banging on the keyboard, we could put on a free screen reader so that as they're banging, they're hearing the output. They're realizing that what they're doing is creating whatever they're typing. So this stage is just going to be very adult guided, but child-led. It's always child-led exposure. For the ages 3 to 4, and oh, I did forget the big thing. We did not just come up with these. These are standards. Okay, we pulled these from Massachusetts state standards around typing.
And also the international standards for technology. So you might think like, oh my God, like there's no way my child could even do this, and they're only 3. But by kindergarten, and we'll show you examples later of the types of standards and the expectations that schools require. And we're going to go over this later, but basically the rule of thumb by the standards, not things that we believe is state standards and international standards, your child should be able to type about 5 words per minute per grade level. So if they're in kindergarten, they should be able to type 5 words per minute. If they're in 12th grade, they should be able to type 60 words per minute. And most of our children aren't able to do that, and that's just a standard. And if I know Leslie's in here,
I know, I can see her.
She works with college children, and we know that one of the biggest factors of access to a lot of materials is just not being able to keep up with the demands. So this is why we're saying start now. If you haven't already started, start yesterday if possible. So yeah.
Yeah, and just a reminder, these are you're building the foundation, so I don't want you to get overwhelmed by this typing thing, because I want you to focus on the smaller steps that are doable with any child. Okay, it'll look different for different children, but it's possible. So ages 3 to 4, it is going to be child-led, always. We're going to start some purposeful keyboarding engagement. Starting to understand rules, that's a big thing, right? We're not going to throw technology, we're going to be gentle to it. And these are stuff you do, this is not a visual impairment thing. This is an anyone thing. Turning the device on and off by 3 and 4, hopefully they can do that with their iPad or whatever device they're doing. But that's going to maybe need direct instruction, because many of our kids who do have sight are learning this incidentally, right? They're watching someone else press the buttons. So we're going to have to directly teach our kids where the button is and how you turn it on. Basic navigation, so arrow keys, tab, enter. Whether or not they need to know what they do, that's a whole other situation. Introduction to hand placement. Typing is very much about hand placement. This may also look different for different kids if there's some fine motor challenges or anything like that. Also, they need to know that they should, if they can, should be using 2 hands and where they should be placed on the keyboard. However, their hands are so tiny at this age, there's no way they can actually use their hands in the correct way, but as long as you start working on that. And then there are the early literacy skills that your child is probably already working on in preschool, right? You know, they're already working on letter awareness, phonemic awareness, listening, comprehension, vocabulary. This can all easily be worked on with typing, those very, very basic literacy skills.
And there's a ton of different games that are out there that are free, and we have some listed in like our different resources to be able to work on a lot of like early literacy skills or basic navigations and things like that. So it's not just like back in the day when it was just like A, B, A, S, D, F, it's more fun drills and games that their child can do, and the quicker that they're able to learn how to use a computer, the quicker they're able to get access to those like fun games instead of the really dry drills. So that's also motivation for the students. So when your child is about in kindergarten age level, so around like 5 and 6, again we mentioned the 5 words per minute is an important goal to try to reach. We mentioned about touch typing, so not relying so much on their vision. This is where your child should really start performing some basic tasks, so things like using a word processor, Google Docs, Microsoft Word, proper posture and positioning, starting a more formalized keyboard program, typing words and letters, especially like their name, the dates, things like that, and playing games that require a keyboard. Most of the times when your child is in kindergarten, they're learning how to do like the different letters, and they're expected to know how to basically read and write when they really start, and they're also expected to already know how to use a computer. Most teachers aren't teaching children how to use computers anymore, so why should our children with visual impairments be behind just because they didn't get exposure earlier? And then the next one by like first grade level, again, around 10 words per minute is kind of our goal. This is where they really should be keeping up with their academics. So in first grade, they're writing sentences and paragraphs. Our children should be able to type sentences and paragraphs using different navigation commands, different keyboard shortcuts. So keyboard shortcuts are basically, you might know, like Control X is to cut, Control V is to paste, so things like that. But children with visual impairments who do require screen readers and screen magnifiers need to know like hundreds more. So really starting those, accessing other computer applications with keyboards, and a lot of practice so that then they can maintain and keep up their skills. And I know like some of you all, like, it might be really overwhelming, but it is possible, and we did want to show like some quick video clips of some of our students, starting really young. So the first video clip is one of my previous students. This is a kindergartner, and this was towards the end of the kindergarten age. I actually had a lot of debates with the team about keyboarding, and they refused to let me start keyboarding because they were like, she's not ready, she's not ready. They put Braille stickers and stuff on, and it wasn't until about April-ish that I was actually allowed to start keyboarding with her. So this is a video that I took in around like May or June, so the end of the school year, so I wanted to show her progress. So
go. Why are you guys?
So one of the things, I think she couldn't type faster, but one of the things that you might notice in this video is like her position isn't the most proper. She's sitting with one leg on a chair because the chair that we're in is way too big for her. Another thing you might notice is there's keyboard stickers. This child is completely blind. She also has additional disabilities, some cognitive impairments, as well as some attention and things like that. And just with like practice, this is where she was able to get by the end of the school year. And now this child, I believe she's in like, this is a long time ago, so I'm gonna age myself, but she's like getting ready to basically graduate now. But this is a long time ago before all the tech and the importance of like pushing tech. So this is an example of a student who's completely blind doing it, and we wanted to show some alternatives for some of the low vision students.
Yeah, and this is the same student you saw with the magnifier. I think this was maybe it's right when I took him over from you, first grade maybe. He's using typingclub.com, which is a free accessible typing program. You can change colors, you can make all kinds of things. It can speak as well, though he's not using that because he has the vision. But he is legally blind. Not a great word to keep typing over and over. It says disappoint over and over. But you'll see his hand placement is excellent. He started messing up a little bit, but then gets right back on track. This is kind of at the beginning of starting typing with him. So he was building that muscle memory. He has excellent two-hand placement. So there are great options out there for low vision and for kids who might need the audio. We don't have time for this. However, I do recommend you watch this. This is a video that is available on Paths to Technology, and it follows a young girl. She's 4 years old, and kind of the technology she's using at the beginning of the year, and it follows her throughout the school year. So you'll see how right here she's working on just the basic double tap for voiceover, which is a very important skill for voiceover. And you'll see by the end of the year, we've now moved those concepts onto a small Braille refreshable display where she's playing games. So I like this because you can see how much in a year with the right services and the right practice, your child really can progress. So these are on our slides. I hope you have the time to watch this later. And you may be thinking, okay, I keep saying you're probably overwhelmed. You're probably overwhelmed. So where do you start? This is also information pulled from a great blog post on Perkins called Intro to Tech. The biggest thing is you want to it all to be child-led. You want to be using high-interest things. So if they're really motivated by music, maybe we start typing lyrics of a song. Maybe we're working on the Joy Player with their favorite music. Age-appropriate skills, right? And that's kind of why we broke up that big keyboarding into smaller chunks, so you can work on those things piece by piece. Embed learning within tasks you may already be doing. If you're working on literacy skills that maybe they're doing in the preschool classroom, why not try it out on a keyboard or some other form of technology? And then we just want you to get language into the child. We want the exposure. We want to make sure that as they move forward, we are setting them up for the most successful child and student that they can be. And so there's like the 3 A's I want you to leave this room. 1, get off the iPad. And 2, acknowledge, advocate, and assess. So acknowledge, the first step is acknowledging your child has a disability, right? In order for that to happen, you need to acknowledge what they might need assessment-wise. We quickly went over that, but there's a lot of resources online for that. Once you know your rights as a parent, and you know what your child needs the most, right? So you need to be the advocate. Hopefully you're not the only advocate. Your child has a whole team that should be backing you up on this. But sometimes you may need to be the advocate to get the right assistive technology specialist, to get the right piece of equipment, whatever it is. But you parents are the #1 advocate for your children. And then assess. And then once you advocate for that assessment, you advocate for your child's needs, get those assessments. Nothing happens without assessments. Assessments lead instruction. They lead all kinds of things to make sure that your child gets the services and devices that they need. So remember these 3 A's.
And just some resources, again, because people assume, I don't know, titles, I'm going to give some crazy resource. My #1 resource is Google. You can type in assistive technology for the blind, or even technology for the blind, for blind babies, for blind high school, anything. Something will be up there. There's a ton of resources. So Google and YouTube are my top 2 resources. And usually if you have a question about it, especially at the younger age, somebody probably have already answered it somewhere. Best Buy is another great resource that I really love. The reason why is, 1, they sell different types of devices, so different brands, so you can go in there and test out like different types of things, and they're not based off of commission, so you can really bother the people and they can answer the questions for you without feeling the pressure to buy. So I go in there all the time to test out. I'm like, oh, this new device just came out. I can't really ask the school to purchase brand new devices all the time, so I go in there and I play around with it. People don't bother me, but if I want to be bothered, I can ask them all these questions. I can play around with the different settings. And they don't get too mad when you mess up all the settings and have to reset. But it's really great to have like the hands-on trial. And it's also a great way for your child, just like a little mini field trips, to go out there and like to play around the cause and effects. And again, because these are all devices where you can't really harm them, like your child, your baby playing on these is not gonna harm these devices. So it's a great way just to get free access to devices and to play around with and to see what's out there. Pass to Technology is a really great resource. It has a ton of teaching resources for teachers as well as for parents, and activities and ideas. AppleViz is another great resource that talks about like different types of Apple products and kind of compares the accessibility of the different types of apps that are out there. AFB technology resources are there. The American Printing House for Blind, the APH that we talked about, has a ton of free adaptive technology when your child has access to quota funds. And then some books, the Assistive Technology Solutions in Minutes, and also the first version of AT for blind and low vision is also great resources too. And then we talked about like just AT resources for assessments. If you really want to really dive in, if your team is having a hard time getting your team to say like yes to the assessments, here's like a ton of resources that you can have access to. I wanted to highlight the Michigan Assistive Technology Guidelines, or TBIs. This is a newer guideline that just recently came out that really breaks down by age and by grade of the different types of tech that your child should be using based off of standards. and it also gives different ideas for different lessons and ideas for parents of different activities that you could be working on that you can do. And also the early learning access technology framework, if you start on page 27-ish, it will break down again by like age of like different activities that you could be doing. And a lot of these like you can start like today. The college readiness checklist is more if you wanted to know like where should my child be in like the future and kind of like be even more overwhelmed, I guess, knowing like what type of stuff that they really should be knowing and why it's important to start yesterday on technology. AT consideration forms, all the rest are going to be examples of different types of assistive technology assessment resources that you can share with your team, especially with your teacher, the visually impaired. And really, this is our, well, the next slide is our contact info and our thank you slide, but we wanted just to open the floor quickly for any questions. And if not, we have some devices that are on the table that you are more welcome to go up and to explore. But does anybody have any questions, or does everybody kind of feel really overwhelmed?
Do you
Yes.
have any suggestions for a keyboard with a child with right side paralysis?
Yeah,
He
so-
uses his hand very little.
Yeah, so does he, how about the other hand? Are they able to use?
No, he uses that very well.
Oh, okay, yeah, so
Yeah.
I do a lot of one-handed keyboarding, and I did bring an example of a miniature keyboard there. So this is an example of just a miniature keyboard, Amazon, you can buy, I think it was like $15, maybe 20. Oh, another great resource I did put on there. Amazon's great because you can try out stuff and return it. So, and it comes in like a day. You know, now, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes they come in like a few hours, and it's really great for your school districts to like test it out, and if you're like, this sucks, free returns. And sometimes you might just need to tech for a little bit and then you just return. Anyways, but this is a miniature keyboard. It's really great for one-handed typing, and there's some examples of some tactile stickers and indicators that are on here for the student to locate. Typing Club has a really great one-handed free typing program that is accessible for screen readers as well as for screen magnifiers. So yeah, so this is what I recommend for one-handed typers. Yeah.
Another question?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the slides online in the conference, and I'm not finding them. Is there a way to access your?
I believe so. We're probably not the best people to ask.
I think the QR code on the back of the name tags, I believe, but I'm also not part of the conference committee, so I'm not really sure.
They don't have it.
Oh, really?
Oh, we have it.
Oh, we don't have it on the.
I think the presenters.
Oh.
They may not be
Yeah.
uploaded yet, but before you leave today,
It should be in there.
Yes.
yeah, or I can find you and give you an answer.
Yeah.
They will be made available, like that is a purpose of
Yeah.
this. Any other questions? Yeah.
So if you have a child that's completely blind, I know I saw your video of the girl that was blind.
Mhm.
Do you recommend them still learning a regular keyboard even though they're gonna need it to braille in the future, like use a brailler?
So most of our students utilize, or ideally, they should be utilizing like so if people didn't hear, if your child is completely blind and is using Braille, should you be using just a standard keyboard or a Braille key? So Braille keys are basically like, if you don't know anything about Braille, you just have like 6 dots that you do different combinations with versus a standard keyboard. And you need to do both. Yeah, so they have different, so this device, for example, is a mix of using a Braille display, so like the little pins that pop up with a standard keyboard. They have different devices where you can use the 6-key entry to access a computer, but the reason why I personally recommend a QWERTY keyboard, so just a regular keyboard, is because when you're working in a workforce, depending on the type of devices that are there, you might not have access to be able to use like a Braille display depending on what your company is willing to buy. And if you are saying like, I can't use a computer, then they probably won't give you the job. But if you can use a computer with a standard keyboard and at least know what it feels like, and then like eventually be able to convince your boss to like buy the special device, then it's easier to do versus like vice versa. So that's why I recommend doing the QWERTY keyboard on there. So learning both.
So I know we're out of time. We are here for questions. Come up, get your hands on some equipment. I hope you learned something. iPads and your rights. Your rights as parents. That's all you need to remember.